So, Frank, how'd the golf course hold up? What'd you think?
I thought it was good. I really did. Credit to the USGA. They resisted making a hybrid setup, and by that I mean just chopping it down to a par 70 just to make it sort of feel like it's US Open tough. You know, if you can imagine, we didn't get the rain. We had rain on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It was nearly an inch of rain on Friday. So this course was predominantly soft. Even today, it was still sort of softish out there, but just with a little bit of breeze and nearly 2 days without rain, you started to see some of the firmness and some of the characters of the golf course. You know, Brooks Koepka, for example, played here 6 years ago in the US Amateur. He didn't make it to the round of match play. Brownlow was a much faster golf course then. So, I think given the conditions that they were looking for, we would have seen that scoring come down. And all credit, there was no crazy, flag or hole locations out there. There was no stupidness. There was no crazy rulings. It's just you got rain. And as we all know, when you look at this golf course out here, if you give them anything, Brownlow, it can be 7,800, can give them 8,000 yards. With a little bit of width of fairway and the ball's going to stop and they know exactly how far it's going to fly, you cannot defend.
I'd like to see 6, 7 of these golf courses designed, maybe a couple tree lined, maybe a couple links golf courses just like this. The game has changed so much that there really are not that many golf courses that even come close to allowing the best players to do what they do, which is hit at 320 yards, 330 yards. So, yes, I thought the golf course was really as close to perfect for the modern game as I have seen. The philosophy was spot on. The setup was spot on. The condition of the golf course was spot on. And I think pretty much every single player has echoed those thoughts.
Speaking of the modern game, David, I thought what Brooks Koepka said really was so telling. He said, I had 300 yards to the pin, and I knew I could get there. Right? I think back, 15 years ago, 250, 260, you might have made that statement.
Well, we've talked about it. It's a better athlete. It's better equipment, and they're bigger, stronger, faster. They're better taught. It's just a different game than a generation ago, and I think it's wonderful. Everybody loves the long ball, and that's what you got to see, and the players got to use it. And just imagine, even with this win today, the score skyrocketed, really nearly 2 strokes higher than yesterday. Imagine if it had been firm and fast the entire week, what the score would have been. And you really got to give hats off to Aaron Hills and the USGA for setting up the golf course, anticipating and hoping they have a firm, fast golf course, and letting it go from there. Not getting tricky with where they put the flags, not doing anything crazy. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature at that point. I think it was a real win. And the thing that Brooks said that really stuck to me, you heard a few things, was the Challenge Tour taught him, if anything, just go play golf and get it done. And that's exactly what he did this week, and especially today. When he had an opportunity to become a U.S. Open champion, he played some damn good golf, and he got it done.
He also acknowledged that the fairways being a little bit wider helped him out quite a bit.
Well, it wasn't that the fairways were just a little bit wider. It was that there was a severe penalty for missing the fairway, which is the modern game. When I hear people say that the fairways need to be narrower, I don't think they're taking into account the fact that when you hit it 320 yards, there's a dispersion rate that's, 6 to 8 yards bigger dispersion rate. So the fairways can't be 30 yards wide or 35 yards wide. They need to be 40 yards wide to allow for the longer tee shot and then have a severe penalty for missing, which they did today or this week. And that's why the best players in the world, the Rorys and the Jason Days and the Dustin Johnsons, they had the length, but they couldn't find the fairways, and they left.
Yeah, when I look at this golf course, too, and David, I want to pick up on something that you've said, because Brown and I, we're just a little bit older. We're not, you're less than 10 years removed from the tour. The biggest change is when we look at this golf course in the last 10 years. You refer to the athletes out there. For you, former world number 1, to say that, almost like, wow, it has changed. Can you elaborate more on that?
Well, I think you see guys that the norm is Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, 6'2", 6'3", fit, strong. They train off the golf course in the gym as hard as they do on the golf course.
Do you think it's a good thing?
In the end, I think it is, because I think it's changed. I think the game has changed. I don't believe we're going to see too many of the 25-year careers, the longevity. I think it's changed that way. It's become a more violent game, if you will. It is about hitting it as far as you can, getting it down there. And that's just a byproduct of the equipment and the golf courses they're facing. It is what it is.
Are we losing some of the art that makes
I don't
such
see
a
how
beautiful
you could.
game?
No, because
No?
I've actually asked on a couple occasions if there's any way to build, similar to what you were talking about, Brandel, a graphic that
8,000
has
yards.
you have a left fairway line and a right fairway line, and you measure out off of that line 270 yards to the edge of the fairway. And now then go out to 295, 310, 320 these guys are hitting. And that dispersion you talk about, is there any way to measure precisely that much more precision that is required with the distance these guys are hitting the golf ball?
Yeah.
If you're hitting it 340 yards in this, and this is the fairway,
Right.
well, if you go sideways a little bit, you get out of the fairway and you get way off of the fairway. The precision you need to keep it in this fairway is dramatically different than somebody who hits it 280 yards. So the game has changed entirely that way. I think precision and talent and skill is still there for sure.
There absolutely is, by the way. There are numbers that narrow that down. You know, a 1% difference in the club head is a 4-yard fade. So at 100 yards, it's 4. At 200 yards, it's 8. And at 300 yards, it's 12. And so if you double that and triple that, you can go out to the dispersion rate you need. And they do. The golf courses just absolutely need to be 8,000 yards long to test the best players in the world, because what's more fun than watching the best players in the world? To your point, your question about art, where's the art gone? Well, we don't get to see the art. We don't get to see the players get up anymore and hit driver as hard as they can. They're up there trying to figure out less than a driver, a hybrid, or a 2-iron, or a 3-iron, because there's some turn point down there that doesn't allow them to hit it 300. That's how far they hit it now. You know, they don't hit it 280 anymore. They hit it 340. So
They would have adapted if it had dried out. But they got the green light, didn't they? They saw the weather forecast. Once it rained, it's like, great. It's like you take the car out of touring mode and you go, whack, I can put it in sport mode here. And they got the driver. Otherwise, we would have seen the throttling back. It mightn't have been as exciting. It would have been different.
That's right. You know, we might say the greatest driver we've ever seen is Brooks Koepka or Dustin Johnson, but they don't get to hit driver anymore. We say Jack Nicklaus because we know how far he could hit a driver and how straight he could. But we don't know how far and straight Dustin Johnson can all the time, or Brooks Koepka can, because they don't get to. So for crying out loud, let's see it.
So the course allowed that.
Okay,
I think what was
the course allowed
course
that.
allowed that this week.
The greatest line I ever got from Jack was, I asked him one time up at the memorial, I said, Mr. Nicklaus, how far could you hit it? And he said, as far as I wanted to.
Well, but what do you do with the Fenway Parks, the Wrigley Fields in our game? If you are suggesting you need to be at 7,800, 8,000 yards, wouldn't those
You need
parks
to be with drive if you want to see drivers.
obsolete without having maybe to trick them up?
You need to be if you want to see drivers. Just fall back to Marion. That was over par at 7,000 yards. So
That
it just depends on what you want.
Yeah, and that discussion can only be held when everybody gets in and has the discussion, because there's a lot of components.
You talk about